Video games. The horror genre. Combine the two. Horror games. Nah. No. Why make an entirely separate game just for horror when you could take the horror and put it into an already existing video game? Does Mario cry blood in your copy of New Super Mario Bros. Wii? Is there a scary man standing in your Minecraft house? Did your favorite Pokemon party member become aware of your existence and start going on a murderous rampage? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I have no choice but to welcome you to the world of video game creepypastas. A video game creepypasta is a creepypasta about a video game. Shocking, I know. What a creepypasta is actually not as commonly understood as you would hope. People mislabel anything horror-related online as creepypasta. Creepypasta comes from copypasta and creepy. A copypasta is basically a block of text you'd copy and paste just about anywhere. Therefore, a creepypasta is a scary block of text you'd spread to just about anywhere. The easiest comparison is to urban legends. One person tells a story, that story gets passed around, and eventually, everyone knows about it. As time went on, creepypasta started to morph into general horror stories, and a lot of the commonly used tropes began to die out, with good reason. Today I want to recount my favorite classic creepypastas in no particular order. Whether bad or good, I still enjoy them, and I hope you can enjoy them too. Now, it's very easy to ask, Krick, why are you dressed as a vampire? I don't know. Horror. Misfortune.gb is a story I genuinely like a lot. It's written less like a story and more like an informative document, telling the reader about this mysterious game that causes misfortune to those who fail to beat it. Misfortune, according to the story, is an anomalous game typically found on the cartridges of other games, accessed through means that change from person to person. Near the start of the game, the player is confronted by a malevolent entity, often considered to represent the devil himself. Upon meeting this being, it will speak to the player.
I exist within the very fabric of reality. Do you wish to challenge me?
This question is followed by a yes or no. Should yes be chosen, the entity will respond with,
Then let's begin.
The gameplay consists of mostly maze-like rooms and puzzles where the objective is to reach the stairs. The graphics of the game are typically ripped from the games Misfortune is found on, though the entity found within the game doesn't appear to be from any other game. The infamous game over screen is actually thought to cause misfortune to those who view it, and the soundtrack of the game is often cited as being unsettling despite the limitations of the Game Boy, even causing a bizarre shift in the thought patterns and moods of those who hear it. I like this creepypasta, because unlike a lot of other classic creepypastas, it isn't a story about the protagonist making a series of horrifically stupid mistakes and ending up in a very easily avoidable nightmare, but instead, a simple warning. If you boot up your copy of Pokemon Blue one day and are instead playing as a young boy in a strange gothic building, perhaps it's best to find another game to play. Mr. Mix is the story of a batshit insane PC game from the early 1990s. Mr. Mix was a typing game, one where the difficulty curve was unreal. Level 1 started you off at a simple 10 words per minute requirement, but eventually, you'd reach 500 words per minute by level 5, effectively stopping anyone from beating it. The game's soundtrack ranged from low growling of progressively worsening volume to a low-quality recording of a hairdryer, to even ear-torturous ringing. Mr. Mix, the character, was just as unsettling as the soundtrack, bearing red cheeks, beady eyes, and an overweight physique. The majority of the children who played the game reported nightmares featuring Mr. Mix telling them softly and threateningly to keep quiet about something. What this something isn't known. It wasn't until a group of hackers managed to bypass the 5th level that the more disturbing side of the game became known. The game would begin to use excessive amounts of memory, typically crashing and writing a massive amount of files directly into the System32 folder. The files are all images of deformed, screaming faces, which would cause permanent damage to the PC if attempts were made to delete them. The hackers inevitably managed to bypass whatever triggered the above, revealing the final level of the game. Or, they would have, had they not refused to explain what they saw. All of them expressed a great deal of distress and reclusive tendencies after witnessing the final level. 2 years after the events described above, one of the hackers was arrested for attempting to kidnap a child from a grocery store. When interrogated, all he would say is, "I am Mr. Mix." I think it's really cool that a lot of things were left up to interpretation here. We don't actually know what happens in that final level, or what Mr. Mix doesn't want kids to tell, or even why the hacker went mad and claimed to be Mr. Mix. And that's good. Letting the reader's brain fill in the blanks is better in this instance. The author knew they couldn't make a perfect finale. They knew nothing they put in that final level would be as horrifying as what your brain could come up with. They let you decide for yourself. You get to imagine what would have driven a man mad, and that's what makes this story so good in my opinion. Leaving things up to interpretation and allowing the human mind to go wild. If there was ever a definitive video game creepypasta, one that represents the highest point of quality, I would hold NES Godzilla maybe a little bit above that. The story is way too long to summarize without taking a lot of its charm away, but to summarize, NES Godzilla is a story about the author buying a copy of Godzilla, Monster of Monsters for the NES, only for it to be not quite what he anticipated. The first two worlds of the game were fine, Earth and Mars. Then things derail. Pathos is the next world, something not from the original. Kaiju not present in the original game start showing up, and already existing ones begin to change. Levels become less like levels and more like a window into another world. Each scene given its own image to show the reader exactly what the author is describing. Over the course of the game, the author starts to have encounters with this bizarre monster, eventually known as Red, who is inevitably revealed to actually be a demon, responsible for the Zeus of a girl the author once was in a relationship with. The anomalous nature of the game cartridge was unfortunately perfect for Red to manifest through, resulting in the author's torment, but also the inevitable final confrontation with Red. This story, despite being as good as it is, isn't regarded as perfect. People feel the ending was stupid, and even I can agree it wasn't a good ending. Some complain about the final world of the story being the hyper-realistic world, but this is where I stop agreeing. Never once is hyper-realism mentioned, just that the graphics were, just maybe just a little bit too advanced for the console it was running on. As for what I like about the story, it's actually quite easy to explain. The story leaves enough unexplained for me to speculate, which is always fun. The idea of Red being an actual demon may seem cliché and dumb, but I think it's cool. Red wasn't part of the game, but instead manifested as the result of the cartridge being a genuine anomaly. In a way, the game was the perfect vessel for being able to torment the author, and one could assume the girlfriend's pre-existing brain problems were either caused by Red, or they were what allowed Red to harass her. If a story can actually make me think this hard about it, and I still have fun doing so, I can't not enjoy it. Also, the game based off the story is kick-ass. Play the demo. Link in description. And, tell them Krick sent ya. They won't have a single fucking idea what that means, but do it anyways. Be funny. The Lavender Town creepypastas are the stories that sound so absurd nowadays, but were the scariest thing back in the day. They're comprised of several separate stories, each surrounding cut content from the location in Pokemon Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow, known as Lavender Town. This location is essentially a Pokemon graveyard, with a tower full of graves and ghosts. Not just ghost-type Pokemon, either. Full-on ghosts. If you try to enter the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town before obtaining the Sylph Scope item, every wild encounter will be against an actual ghost that will do nothing but tell you to leave. Your Pokemon will always be too scared to fight back, and thus the only option is to run. You'll eventually encounter a ghost of the Pokemon Marowak that refuses to let you pass without the Sylph Scope to defeat it. With the basic premise out of the way, now we get on to the stories. Once I've gone through them all, I'll give my thoughts about them in an off-script fashion, so the first and most infamous is Lavender Town Syndrome. The story goes that when Pokemon Red and Green were first released back in 1996, the version of the Lavender Town theme present in the game was much more unsettling. It used high-frequency audio, causing children who heard it great distress. Children who heard it were often cited to have attempted Zeus, else simply ending up greatly ill. A handful of deaths were reported in Japan, causing the song to be fixed in later releases. Next, we have the Buried Alive model. The story states that there was a scrap boss fight at the top of Pokemon Tower against a zombie-like humanoid. The battle in its current state is unwinnable, and no win condition was ever set, meaning if you won, the game would freeze. Buried Alive would use Pokemon that broke the imposed level cap, and 2 non-Pokemon known as White Hands. If you lost against Buried Alive, you'd get a traditional game over screen, complete with an ominous, distorted remix of the Lavender Town theme, known as Static Mesh.Wave. Upon losing, the game would write the game over screen to the internal memory of the Game Boy, resulting in the game over screen appearing anytime the Game Boy was turned on. Upon first meeting Buried Alive, the player would be greeted with the following dialogue.
I'm trapped and lonely. So very lonely. Won't you join me?
Following this, the battle would begin. If the player lost this battle, the following dialogue would play out before the game over screen.
Finally, fresh meat.
Followed by several lines of gibberish. Now for the White Hands. The White Hands were a pseudo-Pokemon intended to appear on the 3rd floor of Pokemon Tower. It had several animations. Its opening animation for its battle cry, an idle animation, and 2 attacking animations for moves called Fist and Brutal. According to the story, viewing these animations is hazardous, though viewing them a frame at a time is fine. The Brutal animation is missing several frames, showing the white hand opening up before cutting out, after which it just appears closed again. The missing frames were never found. Finally, we have the Ghost animation. The Ghost animation was an animation set to appear in specific spots around Pokemon Tower. It was supposed to be comprised of 59 total frames of animation, but upon extraction, half of them were just the standard Ghost sprite. The rest of the frames were static and disturbing imagery. Okay, that's it. I can't take this story anymore. Let's start out with the fact that the Ghost animation is supposedly called Haunting.swf. For anyone who knows what an SWF file is, you know that literally makes no sense being on a Game Boy cartridge. A shockwave flash file on a Game Boy cartridge. And then apparently the white hand animation were GIFs on a Game Boy. GIFs on a fucking Game Boy. And the Buried Alive model, not sprite, model. What? And then static mesh.wave? Wave. On a Game Boy. Wave. A fucking wave. And I'm supposed to believe this. I love Buried Alive. I love all this creepy stuff. But you can't just spout technical nonsense and think you know what you're saying. You can't. Also, just to note, just in case anyone's actually concerned, there were no Yasuos. That's just made up. There's literally no evidence to support the fact that children voice themselves over Lavender Town music. Normally when I do bonus entries, it's not directly related to the topic and only bears one aspect of it. For example, in my video of vague childhood memories about movies, the bonus entry was a vague childhood memory about a video game. It only used half of the theme. This video's bonus entry defies that, because technically, this creepypasta is a classic, but was only uncovered recently due to a rewrite, as the old version was in very poor English. To be honest though, the original version, though not in perfect English, was pretty easy to understand. This story is known as The Unownking. The story is a Pokemon creepypasta about someone receiving a copy of Pokemon Silver at their door while home alone. The game came with instructions that the person giving the copy of the game wishes for the author to carry out. The copy of the game was used and had a huge playtime. After completing the seemingly meaningless instructions, the author awakens the titular Unknown King. Heading to Professor Oak's lab, the author confronts the Unknown King and loses due to its immense power. And instead of simply being taken to the nearest Pokemon Center, the player was sent into battle, only being level 10. Naturally, they lose, and are taken to a similar screen to that of the intro, only instead of Oak, a man dressed in dark clothing congratulates the player on damning the human race, saying he couldn't have done it without them. The screen goes to black, and upon reaching the title screen again, the save won't work anymore. It is to be noted that the player's name is Switch Jesus backwards, implying the player was the Antichrist, bringing the end times by releasing the beast. This story is wild, and it was written back in late 2012, making it very much a classic creepypasta. I really like this story a lot due to the fact that it gives off that energy that classic creepypastas had. And it does so in the year 2021, which is always pleasant. You don't really get to experience classic creepypastas like they're brand new nowadays, so this story was a pleasant trip back in time. Not to mention, it comes with a sprite of the Unknown King itself, which is always nice. Hey, thanks for watching. This video took too many. It took too many. I spent way too long making this thing. Mostly because I was too stubborn to make a simple script. I was actually quite occupied with other things, and every time I'd get free time, I'd just say, no, we'll do it later. Well, hey, look, it's later, and I'm finally finishing this recording, and all that's left is the video edit, and I'm sure I'll be miserable doing that, because, man, oh man, am I tired right now. But, hey, we have a new video, woo, 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 woo. Oh yeah, it is quite very much insane the number of subscribers I've gained since the last time I've posted. Like, oh my god, like, who did this? Who put those subscribers there? What the hell? What? I've gone up at least 200,000,000 subscribers, definitely. No, but in all seriousness, those 100 subscribers are amazing. Whoever you are, you 100 people who are definitely the same person, thank you. Because if I didn't have these subscribers, I'd probably just give up. There's really no reason unless I have an audience to entertain, right? Sure, it's fun, but I like it when I can entertain people. That's why it's also why I make video games. I want to entertain people. And if this is entertaining to you, hey, stick around, because it's just going to keep going. There's no stopping me. I'm still going. No. There's nothing you can do. It's too late. I'm already in your house. There's no running away. I'm already real. It's too late. Garfield gets real on Nintendo DS. That's me. I'm getting real. It's too late. Well, now that that's over with, it's time to wish you a nice, wonderful goodbye. Because I need to edit this video. Oh my god, I need to edit this fucking video. Jesus Christ. Have a fungus.